So this is our figure 4 hip rotation stretch. We're gonna work on external rotation of the left hip, your down hip, and internal rotation of the right hip, your top hip. What we're setting up in is this figure 4 position. So what we're looking for is 90-degree angles at the hip and the knee on the bottom hip, and then a straight line from the torso down through the leg on the back hip. But because your hip is so stiff, we need to allow you to cheat and bring the knee forward a little bit so we can get some effective rotation. From here, you're going to drop the bottom knee down into the ground and then raise that ankle up towards the ceiling. You'll notice that Danny does not get a whole lot of range of motion, and then toes go up towards the ceiling. So we're working the right musculature to get into that position, and we can hold here for 40 to 60 seconds. So go ahead and break there, because that was a minute. Go back into that position, and then we're gonna work on that internal rotation of this back hip. So you're gonna drop that knee down into the ground, just like we did before, and raise the heel up towards the ceiling. Notice Danny likes to cheat because he needs to by getting the knee forward. From here, he's dropping that knee into the ground, picking the ankle up towards the ceiling, and then if he had a lot of range of motion, he would be dropping the foot down towards the floor. And he's fighting for that position as long as he can. Should be 40 to 60 seconds. So what we're working on here with the figure 4 stretch is we're looking for the torso and the leg to be in a straight line. If my hips are really stiff, I can back off a little bit by bringing the knee forward in front of me on my back hip, or on my top hip, raising up a little bit more into this position here. What I'm trying to do is drive my knee down into the ground and ankle up off the floor. So this is the mobility that I have, and then I'm going to point my toes down towards the ground on the back hip. On the front, when I move to that side, I can keep this knee driving down into the ground, raise the ankle up towards the ceiling, and then point my toes up as well. That's going to help develop rotation in the opposite direction. When I'm done laying on my left side, I can switch over to my right and do the same thing to make sure I'm working both sides. So this is a hip flexor mobilization that we're working on here. We're laying with our pelvis hip crease above the foam roller. We're working on almost doing a crunch with our back. So we're flexing the abs to get this movement of our back into a almost flex position, but we're trying to get the hips up a little bit higher off the ground for Danny because his hips are stiff. And then from here, we're going to bend this back knee while keeping that contraction at the abs down low. And you can notice Danny can only go so far while keeping that contraction at his abs because we're working on tilting the pelvis backwards and mobilizing the hip flexors in front. If we look at the other side, go ahead and switch to the other side, Danny. You can see, and go ahead and relax your abs and then bend your knee one more time. So you can see he can get further if he relaxes the abs. And then if he flexes the abs again, the struggle at the leg comes in because we're mobilizing those hip flexors in front. The guys that run from our knee and our shin all the way up to above our pelvis, and they attach on our spine or the top of our pelvis. So this is another mobilization of our hip flexors. We're working almost in a similar position to that one laying over the foam roller, but here we actually are controlling our pelvis without the core. So we're trying to take our pelvis and tilt it backwards by squeezing our butt cheek, our glute, on that down leg. And then from there, after we feel a stretch through the front of the thigh, we can start to push the hips forward to increase that stretch. What's really important is when we push these hips forward is that we don't get extension or curve this way out of the spine. So we have to make sure that the abs are controlling that and the glute is controlling that by tilting the pelvis backward. This is a stretch that I give to people with really stiff hips or people like powerlifters who understand how to control their pelvis, so that posterior pelvic tilt. If you aren't comfortable controlling your pelvis and the tilts of your pelvis do not perform this stretch.